faith, spiritual values, moral issues, government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brandon House.
And welcome back here on July 7th, 2025. We're live. I know we've been doing a lot of best ofs. We're back. We're live. Here it is, 1:01 p.m. Central, 2:01 Eastern Standard. I was going to say we're back after taking off a week, but that did not happen. No, we weren't at the desk with breaking news, but we were at the desk working. I'm about to tell you a story, something that's been going on now for a while behind the scenes. And I don't generally bring too many of my personal stories to the desk. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes running this network that you guys never hear about because it just doesn't rise to the level of sharing with you. Everybody's got drama in their life. Everybody has drama if they're running an organization. If you're a business owner and you're listening today, you got all kinds of drama and things you deal with, right? So we're no different, and it just isn't important enough to bring to the attention of our listeners, our viewers, many of the things we deal with. I will simply say this. There are many days I think to myself, why am I still doing this? 56 years old. I've been doing this for 35 years, but I'm not about to let the turkeys get you down. I don't know. Isn't that some famous politician said that? Don't let the turkeys get you down. You got to keep going because otherwise you let them win. But I'm about to share with you a story today that has been something I've had to deal with accountants and CPAs and tax attorneys, and it involves the IRS. You're going to want to hear this story, folks. And we are about to release to you for you to share this as a press release far and wide. It is going to blow your mind. I was talking with someone today about it on the phone, and the longer I talked to them, the more angry they got. And they're not even us. They're like, I am so mad right now, they said. I'm like, yeah, well, imagine if you were in my shoes. So this is going to make you angry, and that's okay. There is a place for righteous indignation. The Bible says, thou shalt not steal. But I'm about to share with you how the IRS just stole $50,000 from us since we went off the air. The IRS just stole $50,000 from Worldview Tube. They just did. And I'm going to tell you the whole story, but lots of people need to hear this because this is not unique to us. Okay? I was talking to a very close confidant of President Trump about this over the 4th of July break. And they were bemoaning their own personal IRS story. Worse than mine. Very well-known Trump confidant. If I said their name, you'd know them. And they said to me, Brandon, what this tells me is the weaponization of the IRS continues even during the Trump administration. Folks, I want to tell you right now, don't get mad at the messenger. You better lower your expectations because at the end of 4 years, you're going to find out that the deep state largely won and we lost. That the deep state and Washington will go on as it always has. And that Donald Trump will be allowed to accomplish a few things, but not much. Not much at all. Life will go on and we will continue to be a nation in decline as we head toward third world status. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but that's the reality. But not only will we continue on to third world status as a nation, with the lack of work ethic among our own people, the lack of skilled workers and people that want to be diligent and work, we will continue with a huge chunk of the country on entitlement programs. We will continue with a huge chunk of people that milk the system for all it's worth. And the entrepreneurs and the capitalists and the Christians will continue to find themselves on the receiving end of persecution, and that will grow. We also are going to look back after the 4 years of Donald Trump's second term and realize, like we did after George W. Bush, that the surveillance state became bigger under President Trump. Leo Holman has a brand new article out over at leoholman.substack.com. I'm going to have him on Brandon House Live tonight. Trump's BBB, big beautiful bill just passed by the Senate, will massively expand the digital biometric surveillance state for years to come. He's right. Folks, I've tried to tell you from day one. Manage your expectations. We're going to get a little bit. We're going to get some things. Maybe they were able to stop this massive tax increase. I'm thankful for that in the BBB. But there's going to be many things that we find out about, and it may be years from now. And we're going to be right where we were with George W. Bush. Looking back going, wow. If that had happened under a Joe Biden or a Kamala Harris, we'd be screaming. I've told you guys many times, the globalists, they can get away with more sometimes by electing Republicans than Democrats. But if you want to understand just how much poor President Trump is up against with his administration trying to reform this system, and I'm not blaming President Trump. This is I said it before we went on the break, which I didn't get. I got one day off. I'm not complaining, but I got one day off. Other than that, I was up to my eyeballs in alligators. I felt like I'd been thrown in alligator Alcatraz. All the alligators I was putting out, all the fires. I mean, I came back in the news desk. You can't see it, but the ceiling is collapsed above my head. A pipe burst while we were gone out of the studio. Thankfully, we caught it in time before it did too much damage. That's just one of about 8 things that's happened since we went on break. I told my wife, I got to go back to radio and TV to get a break from my break. There's more sanity if I just stay on the air. But poor President Trump, he's trying to turn the Titanic around. And I don't think he's going to be able to do very much, to be honest with you, at the end of the day. I don't know what. On a scale of 10, 10 being the best, I don't know if he's going to get to a 4 or a 5. I don't know. But you better manage your expectations. And you better be prepared to be shocked when you look back and say, whoa, wait a minute. That happened under the Trump administration 2.0? Now, I hope by now you've tweeted, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth Social, put out everything you can to everybody you can. Because what I'm about to share with you, you're getting the scoop. I said, I'm saving this for my radio and TV audience. I have some talk show host friends, as you know, and they're like, hey, I want to break that story. I said, no, I'm breaking it to my own audience. Then you can have it after the fact. But I want to let you know that what I'm about to share with you, folks, is my personal firsthand experience. It's going to blow your mind. But it's happening to people and organizations and entrepreneurs and conservatives and Christians all across this country. I'm not the only one. So I'm going to share with you. Again, I hope you have gone out there and said, tune in right now. Worldview Radio with Brandon House at worldviewtube.com, vcy.org, one of the great terrestrial stations of theirs, or WROS out of Jacksonville, whatever you're listening to, told them to tune into that station or get to that website. I hope you've done that. Because you need to hear this. We're not winning. Everyone, oh, America, we're so back. I've tried to tell you, don't say that. That's not true. We're not. We are a long way from being back. The weaponization of the IRS continues against Christians and conservatives. So here it is. You ready? We're going to put this online. Logan, you can let me know when it's available for them, particularly at that unique URL, so it'll be easy for them to find. Here's the headline of the press release that I'm releasing right now. Worked on this over the 4th of July break. By the way, did you love the freedom, celebrating the freedoms we have? So much for that. We are a socialist nation, folks. We are not a free people. We are not a free people. And I have to tell you something, folks. I wasn't in the mood for celebrating 4th of July because I'm like, this is a ruse. We are not a free people. And not to mention, I'm sick of the fireworks and what they do to my dogs. How about you guys or your cats? I mean, it was they're eating the dogs and cats. Now it's they're terrorizing the dogs and cats with fireworks, the poor dogs. But I was in no celebratory mood because I'm like, really, what are we celebrating? That we live under a quasi-socialist government that's not getting any better. We're still in a quasi-socialist country. Happy 4th of July, everybody. Are you kidding me? Do you think the founding fathers would tolerate what we've tolerated? So here we go. Here's the headline. IRS slaps it's actually over $49,000. IRS slaps over $49,000 fine on conservative Christian broadcast organization for mailing tax payment during agency's 2-day online system outage. The headline tells it all. Conservative Christian broadcaster and founder of WorldViewTube.com, Brandon House, is calling for expedited IRS reforms under the Trump administration after the agency imposed and upheld an indefensible $49,000 fine, despite 2 abatements for mailing a tax payment when the IRS's online payment system was offline for 2 days. Brandon House, a prominent conservative talk show host and Christian broadcaster of more than 30 years, has clear-cut documentation, along with his CPA, and I might add tax attorney, of Internal Revenue Service lawlessness and political weaponization following a series of events involving a payroll tax payment in 2021. Yeah, you heard it. 2021. This is now percolated to the top. We've been dealing with this since about 2022, I think. In 2021, his certified public accountant, CPA, attempted to pay the organization's payroll taxes through the IRS's automated payment system. However, the system was down for 2 days, prompting the CPA to advise House to send a check overnight to avoid late fees or penalties. House followed this advice, but months later, he received a letter from the IRS fining him $43,000 for not using the automated system. House's CPA filed an appeal due to the IRS automated payment system being down, and the IRS initially abated the penalty. By the way, folks, we have a letter. We have a letter where they are abating the penalty. Well, that would be common sense. But hey, we're dealing with the federal government here. That word common sense does not come into play with most of the workers of the federal government. We have a letter. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. We actually have 2 letters. Twice they've abated this $43,000 because they're like, oh, the system was down for 2 days. He overnights a check. Okay. But no. You're about to find out, they came back to us 2 years later and said, you know that letter? Well, we're reversing ourselves. We should have never sent you that letter. We want the $43,000 plus interest now. Over $49,000 is what it ended up being. You got to hear the rest of this. Now, I'm not the only one, folks. This is going on nationwide. We'll be right back. We live in uncertain times. In fact, we live at a time when our own governments all over the world are warning us that there could be big problems with our power grid. World War III seems to be right on the horizon. Let me ask you this. Do you have a satellite phone? Should communications go down with cell towers? Do you have a satellite phone to get a hold of that college student or your spouse who travels, whatever it might be, to get a hold of your senior adult parents? We have satellite phones at worldviewtalk.com, and you get the satellite phone for free when you sign up for their very reasonable payment programs for the service. Sign up for the service with a reasonable contract, get the satellite phone for free. Worldviewtalk.com. You'll also find they have, well, what I now have, which is a solar generator. Yeah, I have a gas generator, an LP propane generator, but what if that goes down? I want to back up to my backup. So I now have a solar generator as well. You'll find them at worldviewtalk.com. Check it out today, worldviewtalk.com. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, website worldviewradio.com. All right, during that break, I was informed that you can now go to worldviewtube.com/IRS to read this press release. worldviewtube.com/IRS. I'm about to tell you, by the way, very interesting story about an IRS agent, because we did an appeal, multiple appeals. We did the first one and got a letter saying, oh, we're going to abate that. Well, that's because that would be common sense to abate a $49,000 tax penalty for sending a check to pay for payroll taxes when your system's down. And then we had to appeal it again, even though we got a second letter abating it. Well, here's the story. You guys are going to love this. Those of you in Wisconsin and Milwaukee. The second appeal person to get it, the first person cleared it with another letter, second letter, then retired. And somehow it got brought back up and assigned to someone else. Guess where the IRS appeal agent lives? Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I got a really cool story. And by the way, I don't say this about many government people, but a very, very nice lady. Very nice, very professional. She was on my side. Yeah, you got to hear the rest of this. She's a good Milwaukeeite. Is that what you call them? They're Milwaukeeites? I don't know. But she even knew where the headquarters of VCY was. She didn't know what it was, but she knew where it was. Because I said, oh, you are in Milwaukee. My network's based there. Really, where? I told her, hey, I was just by that building. I didn't know what that building was. I'll get there. Let me keep going. So it's now at worldviewtube.com/IRS, the article. So let me pick it up. I'm going to back up, get into it. In 2021, the certified public accountant attempted to pay the organization's payroll taxes through the IRS's automated payment system. However, the system was down for 2 days, prompting the CPA to advise House to send a check overnight to avoid late fees or penalties. House followed this advice, but months later received a letter from the IRS fining him $43,000 for not using the automated system. House and CPA filed an appeal due to the IRS automated payment system being down, and the IRS initially abated the penalty. However, 2 years later, the IRS sent a demand letter for the original $43,000 plus interest. When the CPA provided the original IRS abatement letter, the IRS claimed it was sent in error and reversed the abatement. By the way, something my CPA in 25, 30 years has never seen. Guess what? Neither did the lovely lady, IRS appeals lady in Milwaukee. Never seen this. It was like, what? Really? Another appeal was filed. And in the fall of 2024, an IRS review officer closed the case, issuing a letter, this would be a second letter stating that nothing was owed for 2021, including no penalties or interest. Despite this, the case was inappropriately reopened in 2025, with the IRS again demanding payment of over $49,000 with accrued interest. The advanced appeal was assigned to an IRS agent based in the Midwest. I'm going to tell you, it's Milwaukee. And she agreed with Mr. House that this was a ludicrous penalty that should be abated on numerous grounds, including the fact the IRS sent 2 letters abating it already. House says the agent was extremely professional, detailed, and sympathetic as she worked over the course of nearly a month through phone calls and emails with him and his CPA to document his file and try to convince her superior, Mr. House, should have the erroneous penalty abated for a third and final time. When the agent called Mr. House, this would be over the 4th of July holiday that I didn't have, other than one day. When the agent called Mr. House to inform him that she had been rebuffed by her superior, she encouraged him to continue to appeal. As she said, he has a legitimate case. However, he was told he needed to pay the over $49,000 erroneous payment to the IRS in order to continue the appeal process and to stop the clock from ticking and adding additional interest and penalties. Now, here's where it gets really pretty. House paid the more than $49,000 online, but only after the IRS agent spent several minutes guessing at what the online system was asking House for in order for him to make the payment. The IRS online payment system is so poorly built and functioning that the IRS agent herself was finding it difficult to assist House in making the online payment. Only with the two of them guessing at the antiquated online form was House successful in handing over the more than $49,000 to the IRS that was being held by House for future IRS payroll taxes. House will now be forced to make budget cuts within his broadcast organization, as well as not fill a slot that opened up with the recent departure of a television control room technician. After making the erroneous and twice abated payment to the IRS, House made his next phone call to the chief of staff of a well-known U.S. congressman and conferenced in his CPA. The two of them briefed the chief of staff on Brandon's case, and then the CPA filled the chief of staff's ear with several more egregious cases she's handling for additional clients and taxpayers. The chief of staff was clearly shocked and conveyed interest in using this new information to work with a congressional committee for a possible hearing and investigation into IRS incompetence and weaponization. Mr. House was asked if he would testify before such a committee hearing, and House quickly agreed to do so in order to inform the American people, Congress, and the White House of the urgent and immediate reforms needed to the IRS and America's tax system. House said, quote, "If not now, then when? If these long overdue reforms do not happen under the second Trump term, they will likely never happen, and America will continue to slide toward third world status where entrepreneurs and conservatives are financially crushed by an out-of-control, bloated, and tyrannical federal government that is literally making up the rules based on the whims of incompetent and politically motivated bureaucrats," end quote. There are numerous reports from CPAs as well as IRS employees in the Mid-South that the IRS allowed numerous tractor-trailer loads of taxpayer mail and tax returns to be shredded when the mail backed up due to the COVID shutdown. Did you guys hear that? We have CPAs and an IRS whistleblower that the IRS in the Mid-South was shredding tractor-trailer loads of tax returns, including checks. That's how stupid they are. CPAs were telling me how their clients had to, I'm not reading from the press release, I'm just telling you now, how the taxpayers had to write new checks for what was mailed tax returns and checks because the IRS got so far behind during the manufactured COVID crisis. And by the way, that was the same 2021 when we made these tried to make the online payment and the system was down. That's because they were all at home in their pajamas eating chocolates and watching The Price is Right instead of at work doing their job. But you could keep the big box stores open. They were shredding the tax returns of taxpayers. There should be a congressional investigation into that alone, and CPAs can fill the ears of members of Congress on this. There are numerous reports from CPAs as well as IRS employees in the Mid-South that the IRS allowed numerous tractor-trailer loads of taxpayer mail and tax returns to be shredded when the mail backed up due to the COVID shutdown. There must be a congressional investigation into these credible reports as it further reveals the rules for thee but not for me mentality at the IRS. House argues that family business owners and organizations should not have their money taken by the IRS through bogus fines and penalties, especially when the agency itself has issues such as obsolete software, archaic code, long phone wait times, and system downtimes. House stated, quote, "The IRS should not," quiet, Dolly, they're supposed to be here. They're fixing the leak. They're supposed to be here. House stated, quote, "The IRS should not be allowed to take money from taxpayers when the IRS has no legal basis for doing so. They should not send letters of abatement on erroneous fines and penalties and then reverse them 2 years later with thousands of dollars in additional interest. The IRS has a long history of punishing and plundering taxpayers and organizations for the failures of the IRS to function a consistent and equally applied standard of written law. This harassment and lawlessness must stop, end quote. Now, again, we're going to open the phone lines. My guess is, if you can get through, we're going to hear lots of nightmares. Because, again, I am not the only one dealing with this. Okay? My CPA, just my CPA, she has been doing this about close to 30 years. She wanted to be on this broadcast today. She wanted to be on my TV show tonight. But the firm is very big. They have like 25 offices, 250 employees and 25 offices, something like that. They're a big firm. This isn't somebody doing tax returns in their basement. Not that there's anything wrong with that. A lot of CPAs, I'm sure, work from home. This is a big firm. She is livid. She filled that chief of staff of that congressman's, his chief of staff's ear with one story after another where the IRS just makes up the law. Now, my CPA, she would come right out of typecasting from Hollywood. If you were looking to pick a female CPA and cast her for a role in a movie, you would pick my female CPA. She is a dot the I, cross the T kind of gal. I talk to her some days more than I do my wife. And that's not exaggerating. Because we are so compliant. In fact, the dear lady in Milwaukee who got the appeal, she said, as she looked through my history, and we had more than one phone call, Mr. House, you have a long history of being very prompt on your taxes. I'm like, yeah, yeah. And she heard me talk to Dolly. I scolded Dolly for grabbing my shoe, one of my shoes, and running off with it. And she said, I'm assuming Dolly is your dog. And I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, my dog runs off with my shoes. I said, does your dog only run off with your shoes? She said, yes. I said, that's because your dog really likes you. She's choosing your shoes because of her preference for you, and your scent is on those shoes. Because my dog could run off with everybody else's shoes, but only runs off with mine. She said, wow, you're making me feel good. I said, yeah, your dog really, really likes you. We talked about our kids. We talked about what I do. And I finally said, are you in Kansas? Because the number she would call me on would come up as a Kansas number. She said, no, I'm in Milwaukee. I said, you're kidding. I said, I've been working with a radio network, VCY America, out of Milwaukee for 30 years, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue. She said, you know, I was over there the other day picking up my son and went right by that. And I thought to myself, I wonder what that is. I said, well, I can tell you what it is. It's a Christian TV, a radio. She said, they have TV here too? Oh, I got to tell you more. Don't go away.
Consumers often ask, what should I expect when I take the Bella Grace Elixir? And the answer's varied. It really depends on what your health and wellness needs are. I would consider this as your foundational core product for a whole range of health and wellness issues. Let me give you a few examples. If you're a little bit older and you have some joint health issues, some problems with mobility and discomfort, the elixir is going to be your best friend. If you have some skin health issues, wrinkles, hydration, aging, all of those elements are going to be benefited from the elixir, including age spots. Now, if you're in a younger demographic, maybe visual health is where you need some assistance. Eye fatigue, dry eyes, all of those are going to be benefited by the elixir. It's a core product because it benefits so many.
youtube.com/IRS. If you want the press release, send it around, folks. As one close Donald Trump confidant said to me over the holiday, we clearly still have the weaponization of the IRS under Donald Trump and the Trump administration. And I'm not blaming President Trump. Don't get me wrong, I'm not. And neither was he. He's just simply saying, we've got a lot of progress that needs to be made. But you can read the whole story and send it around, worldviewtube.com/IRS. Now, so I said to this gal that got the appeal, she's the second person to get it. The last person, as we heard, sent a second abatement letter, clearing it all out again for the second time, and retired, apparently. And they decided to bring it up again. And this dear lady from Milwaukee got it. So I told her when I was dealing with this a few weeks ago, I got to go on the air at 1 o'clock, but I'll call you back. And she was emailing as well. And I said, I worked with the radio network for 30 years in Milwaukee, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue. I was by there the other day picking up my son for something. And I saw that building and I thought, I wonder what that is. I said, it's a Christian radio network. I said, they also have TV 30. She said, we have a TV 30? I said, yes, you do. And I'm the 10 o'clock news. Turn it on at 10 o'clock. You'll see me. She went to her website. The IRS wouldn't let her look at my website. So she said, well, I got a phone. She laughed. She went to the website on her phone. She said, this is really interesting. I got a brother who's in the military. I'm going to send this to him. He'll find this really interesting. And she talked about how she keeps her kids up on what's going on, tries to inform them about what's happening. And I said, if you ever decide you don't want to work for the IRS anymore, I'm going to give you my cell phone number. I'm going to give you my cell phone number so that nobody can accuse you of taking it off my file, because I'm going to give it to you myself. And I gave it to her. You ever leave the IRS, call me. Because I might want to hire you, along with some other business people, to be a consultant. Because this gal knew the law. Look, folks, there are bad bureaucrats, really bad. And I think a lot of them are terrible. But then there are some really good ones. This lady was extremely sharp, because I would ask a question and she would go and find the answer. Well, give me a minute. And she'd go looking through the file, looking through the IRS rules and everything. And she had everything. She could go through and look at all this stuff and she'd have an answer. She knew what she was doing. She was very competent. That's not something you hear about most IRS people probably, or federal government employees. She was very competent. And she said, Mr. House, this is ridiculous. You are simply trying to pay your payroll tax so you would not acquire a penalty or a fine, and our system was down for 2 days. Would your CPA sign a statement, and they'll know exactly what I'm talking about, under the penalty of perjury, that they tried for 2 days to make this payment? I said, yes. Will you get me that letter and send that back to me, will you? We did. She did everything she could to document this and say to her supervisor, this was abated twice. The letters are here in the file. You can't go back 2 years later and say, we've changed our mind. We don't want the 43,000 2 years later. We want over 49,000 now. You can't do that. But they did. I don't give financial advice. I give financial opinion. My opinion is you should be doing everything within the law to make sure you have as much of your assets or a percentage of your assets off the table, off the radar. I don't care if you buy gold and silver and bury it in your backyard, But you should have, in my opinion, a percentage of your assets off the table because the corrupt IRS can come get it from you anytime they want, and they will make it up. They will make up the rules and just steal it from you. And let me tell you something, folks, there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing. Nothing. I at least have a platform to warn the American people that we have a rogue agency that has been weaponized, and we all know that. That's documented. And Congress has held hearings about this, but nothing has changed. Walked through the room the other night, and that guy looks like he's got a squirrel, a dead skunk sitting on top of his head. What's that guy's name? The dude that looks like he's got a dead squirrel or skunk on top of his head. Trey Gowdy? He's over at the Fox, what I call the Fox CIA channel. Don't you remember that guy telling us about this? We're going to get to the bottom of this. Oh, this is not. Oh. What's the other guy? Jim Jordan? Trey Gowdy, Jim Jordan. These guys tell you so much, but what do they ever do at the end of the day? Nothing. It's a dog and pony show. I did turn on Fox a little bit this break to see what I think is the Fox CIA channel, in my opinion, is doing. And after watching it off and on throughout the so-called break I didn't get, I said to my wife, I said to Leo Holman, you know what the Fox CIA channel is? It is nothing but, in my opinion, a big propaganda piece to keep the country divided. It's right versus left, right versus left, right versus left, liberals versus Democrats, Republicans versus Democrats, Marxists versus globalists, whatever it is. They have no solutions. I don't hear solutions. I just hear them stirring up stuff. And it's generally stuff that's an inch deep and a mile wide that the dumbed down Fox CIA viewers can digest or want to digest. Not that they couldn't digest more. They don't want to digest more. They watch Fox because it's simple. And they don't have to think. They can be told what to think. We know the IRS is weaponized. What did Trey Gowdy do about it? What has Jim Jordan done about it? What have any of them done about it? Nothing. So I don't give financial advice. I'll give that disclaimer again. I give financial opinion. You better take some stuff legally off the radar because they can come for what you have anytime they want. Even when it's not in the law. My CPA has a client that has trucks and deals with emergencies like a natural disaster or flooding. And sometimes those trucks go down to states south of Tennessee. And sometimes those trucks go north of Tennessee. And he deducts said trucks and equipment. Which, if you got clients in business south of Tennessee and you got clients in business north of Tennessee, you would think he ought to be able to deduct his trucks and equipment and costs for doing his business. And the IRS says, no problem deducting whatever you're doing down there south of Tennessee, a southern state he goes down to, south of Tennessee, no problem. But the state you're going to north of Tennessee, we will not allow you to deduct your equipment and trucks for that. What? Where is that in the rules? Show me where that's in the rules. They're just making it up. She shared multiple stories with me and the chief of staff of this congressman where the IRS is just making it up. And there's nothing she can do about it. Nothing the client can do about it, the taxpayer. And there's, by and large, nothing any members of Congress will do. And you need to ask yourself why. Is it because they're not good people? No, there's some good people up there. But by and large, folks, the U.S. Congress is not worth a pitcher of warm spit. They don't do the hard things. They throw us a bone every now and then. But by and large, this government is not run by the president. He doesn't have full authority over the federal government. And Congress doesn't really have full authority. Because you have bureaucrats that do whatever they want. FISA courts, does that ring a bell? Rogue judges. Congress could actually eliminate some of those lower courts. They created them, they can eliminate them. They won't. Ask yourself why. Because I'll tell you why I believe. Many members of the U.S. Congress were put there by the CIA. They're controlled. My accountant went on to explain to this chief of staff multiple stories, and the chief of staff was like, how long has this been going on? Is it gotten worse recently? She said it's gotten worse in the last year. Oh, since they hired the 87,000 IRS agents? I think they're trying to justify the hiring of those 87,000 and the big money they're bringing in. But it's more than that. It's also weaponization. You tell me why I got 2 abatement letters. You tell me why I got this nice lady out of Milwaukee, IRS appeal lady, who looks at the appeal and says, yeah, 2 abatement letters. Our system was down. Signed statement under the penalty of perjury by the CPA that the system was down. So he overnights a check, trying to be a compliant payroll taxpayer. And we fine him? Are you kidding me? This should be waived. We've already waived it twice. Why are we going back on ourselves? Our supervisor. Here's what I say. If we had any members of Congress that have the authority to do this, that have the courage, who want to solve problems, they would contact me. I would give them the name of this gal, and she would tell you who that supervisor is, and he would subpoena him or her. I don't know. I don't know what their gender is. I don't know what their pronouns are. But he would subpoena that individual to Congress and say, we want to know why you did that. We also want to subpoena all these other people that this CPA is talking about. And I even said to my CPA, if she can get permission from her boss, we should actually put on a TV show where we call in CPAs from around the country and we hold our own congressional hearings. If Congress won't do it, we should do it. We'll set up our own TV show and bring in CPAs and let them testify, and taxpayers and business owners, and we'll film it and put it out to the American people. We are not a government of the people, by the people, for the people. We are a government run by bureaucrats and tyrants out of Washington, D.C. And we just celebrated a holiday that should be canceled. Unless and until we actually have liberty and freedom in this country. Because what we have now is despotism. It's the appearance of liberty and freedom. But there's not liberty and freedom. When you have rogue agencies that will not follow the law, when whistleblowers and people inside the bureaucracy will tell you this is not legal, it is not right, it is not the law. And supervisors say, we don't care. We looked up who he is. We're not about to abate that, even though we've abated it twice. We're not about to do it a third and final time because we don't like him. We don't like his worldview. 1-800-347-9829. 1-800-347-9829. You know what else I said to my wife? There's a reason a lot of people finally retire. Let me tell you something. And young people hear these stories, do you think they're motivated to go run organizations? No. One reason we have the decrease is because we have an environment that discourages it. 1-800-347-9829.
I'll tell you one little quick story. We had a Worldview Weekend client who lived in California, lost their house. Very wealthy guy. He didn't use Bitcoin. He came over here, drove to Arizona with $286,000 worth of his gold because he had no money and no house available. His bank was shut down because he couldn't have access to his bank account.
Was this during the fire? Was this during the fires?
During the fire. Didn't have his driver's license. He lost it. The state wouldn't give him a new license because he had no active mailing address. Real mess. So he came to Arizona to buy a house. He's moving everything over. He said, the only thing I got in my possession that I can get liquid with right now is my gold. I gave him a check for $286,000, and guess what? I didn't need his social, his driver's license. Sort of smiled, and I said, I know you and Brandon talked about how this worked, but boy, this is great. I feel good. I got my money. Nobody bothered me, and I'm protected, and it's private.
Just simply go to worldviewgold.com, fill out the form, worldviewgold.com. All right, 1-800-347-9829. The call screener said, welcome back, I think. 1-800-347-9829. 1-800-347-9829. Eric, line 1. Thank you for calling in, Eric.
Yeah, hi, Brandon. I just wanted to ask for clarification to make sure I understand, and all the listeners. So your accountant sent overnight mail a check for the amount due, right?
Yep.
Did that check get cashed?
It did. In fact, the dear lady from Milwaukee actually said, this is the date we received your check on.
Okay. So then now you just had to pay $49,000, which is the $43,000 again, plus $6,000. So you did a duplicate payment?
No. The $43,000, which they abated 2 years ago, then they came back and changed their mind 2 years later and said we're adding all the interest to be over $49,000, was the penalty. Understand, Eric, that is just simply a penalty. It's not interest. She even said that to me. She said, Mr. House, do you understand that this is not because you paid taxes late? It is not interest on late payment. This is only a penalty because you paid with a check, not online. There is an IRS rule that if you pay above a certain dollar figure in your payroll taxes and you don't do it online, you will be fined. So Eric, the 40 now over 49,000 is only a fine because I didn't pay online because the online system with IRS during COVID 2021 and they weren't answering calls and they were shredding mail was down. So we overnighted it. And that's why we got fined for overnighting a check. That's it. Had nothing to do with making a late payment or anything.
The check that was overnighted was for the amount due in taxes.
No, it was not. No.
Oh.
The 43,000, which they abated, and then 2 years later came back and said, we've changed our mind. We want the money plus interest, which is now over 40,000 I paid the other day, was simply a penalty. The check that I sent was good. It cleared, but it was for way more than $49,000 because it was a total of all payroll taxes. The $49,000 was simply just the penalty for overnighting a check.
Okay.
Does that make sense now?
Yeah, but I don't understand if you overnighted a check when the system was down, why would there even have been a penalty at all? You overnighted it immediately.
Because in the IRS code, if you owe above a certain dollar figure and you don't use the online system, you are fined.
Okay. So basically, you paid a $43,000 fine overnight, and now they made you pay a $49,000.
Yeah, well, that's because of interest. They changed their mind after 2 years and said, we changed our mind about that abatement 2 years ago when it was 43. Now we want the money plus additional interest onto that 43, which is now over 49, which we paid to turn the clock off. But the dear IRS lady in Milwaukee, and I'm not saying that facetiously, she was extremely professional and on my corner. Right. She was making the case to her supervisor why this was stupid. He said, Mr. House, you're going to have to pay it to continue to appeal. Right.
But just so I understand, so you paid first a $43,000 fine and now a $49,000 fine?
The first 43 was never paid. It was waived. Remember, we got an abatement letter. Then 2 years later, they changed their mind and said, we've changed our mind. We want the 43.
Okay. Well, if it was abated, then because they already had your check and they cashed it, so did they refund that money back to you?
Nope.
Or credit to your account for future? Or?
No, because they wanted the fine. I paid the original tax. The tax was paid. They cashed the check, but the 43 is a fine for paying by check, not online. Then when they changed their mind 2 years later, they added the additional penalties to it of interest, which brings it to over 49,000. Let me run to Marla real quick. Marla, line 2. Hi, Marla.
Yes.
Yes, Marla, go right ahead. Line 2.
Yeah, hi. I have a question because I've been listening to you and I am fascinated with what you're talking about. I applied for another credit card. I have one and I've had it for a while, but I thought, well, it'd be nice just to have two. And so I won't mention the credit card company, but about 4 days ago, I did online thing, and then they said fine, the whole bit. And then a couple of days after that, they sent me a notice that they needed a lot more information. Now I have impeccable work history. I mean, credit, everything, credit report, the whole bit. I've never had a problem with nothing. And so I found this odd. And now they're telling me that I have to have, it says here, and secure your facial biometrics.
Yeah, I would
and other personal information. And then it says if I give a consent or I decline, and if I decline, they're going to take this to another level.
Yeah, well, let me so I can run to Kathy real quick. Get used to this, because by the way, in the BBB, there's lots of surveillance in the BBB. So get used to it, America, because what Marla's talking about is the way it's going. Kathy in Minnesota, line 3. Okay, David in South Dakota, line 1. Hi, David.
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
I just want to say, is there a chance, because I've seen it here, they're spraying in our skies, that this whole issue in Texas is created by
weaponizing the weather? You know, we did a whole show on this, which again, you thought this would be in the whole UFO Bigfoot category, right? But we had a guy on when all this was going on last year. Remember that? And he's got the website, which I don't remember. We should probably get him back on again. Climate Viewer or something. And he went into great scientific detail on how this has been going on, you know, like 100 years they've been working at doing this. So yes, there is concern that this was the weaponization of weather. Can I prove it? No. But what just happened is so odd and so tragic and so heart-wrenching. And I think all of us watched the videos, right? I've got a bunch of them in the Worldview Report tonight. But yeah, that's David, I would not be shocked. So my friends, worldviewtube.com/IRS. Maybe you want to send that to the White House. Maybe you want to call the White House and send them worldviewtube.com/IRS and beg President Trump for the tax reforms we need. What we need to do, folks, if they're not going to go to an external IRS, you know, external revenue service with tariffs, we need to get rid of this system and go to a sales tax. Because right now, all of your people in these strip clubs and drug dealers are all doing cash and not paying taxes. Only you and I. Take care.
This has been Worldview Radio.
And we're back with WROS Jacksonville, Florida, and you here at Worldview 2. And we really need to do that, folks. We need federal law that says that we're going to a federal consumption tax, and that you cannot have a federal consumption tax ever alongside a federal income tax. Because otherwise you're just going to end up with what's called a VAT tax, value added tax, which they have in Europe. They tax those people into oblivion. Their regular tax plus value added tax. The legislation needs to be written very clearly. You cannot have both. But if you go to a federal sales tax, consumption tax, all of the strippers, I'm sorry to have to even use that word. Do you think those gals are paying federal tax? No. And we're not talking about, 50 strip clubs. They're all over this country. So why does the IRS and Congress not want to close that loophole? Because they're not paying taxes on that money. You know they're not. Why do they not care about you think those guys go to those and use credit cards, some of them? Yeah, so the wife can see it? I highly doubt it. So they're going there using cash, a lot of them, right? Why is the IRS and government not closing that loophole? And the drug dealers? You see, the system is rigged. So good people get robbed and cheated, and the free market system denigrated, sullied. And the criminals and the crooks and the perverts and the dark-hearted, they prosper. Do you know how much you can buy when you don't pay any tax on all your ill-gotten illegal gains or your immoral gotten gains? Why does the IRS and Congress and other way not go after that? Because the objective isn't to go after the drug dealers and the strippers. The objective is to go after the middle class, to destroy middle class. That's what communists always want to do, destroy the middle class. And that's what you're going to end up with. You're going to end up with a gutted out, just hollowed out middle class. We are on our way to a third world status. And if there is to be any make America great again, it cannot happen until we get the United Nations out of America and we change our tax system. Everything else is putting on a Band-Aid that can be ripped off in the next administration. Executive orders, folks, those are fixes, temporary fixes. They need to be put into law. But the first thing we need is religious liberty and economic liberty. And right now, the IRS continues to be used as a weapon to attack free speech, freedom of religion, and the free market system. And when you see members of Congress and you see President Trump take that on, then you'll know they really want to make America great again. Till then, it's sloganeering, in my opinion. Doesn't mean some good things won't be done, but it's sloganeering. And you watch, and we look back, the middle class will have gotten virtually nothing compared to what will be put on them. When you do a scale, you'll have some good things that happen, but then when you put on the bad things that happen to them, you'll eventually see that the middle class were weighted down. The gains that were made were not big enough to offset the burden. But you will see the tech bros, the hedge fund guys will become richer and richer and richer. So, we had a guy took another job to go and practice his degree. We're not replacing that guy in the control room because the IRS just stole the money. Almost $50,000. Money, by the way, we set aside for future taxes. So, worldviewfoundation.com is one way you can support us, worldviewfoundation.com, or by going to worldviewtube.com/sponsors. worldviewtube.com/sponsors. By the way, when you go there, you'll find out about Swiss America, precious metals. Again, I don't give financial advice, I give financial opinion. You better take legally as much as you can off the table, because anytime they want to come steal it from you, they can do it, and there's nothing you can do about it. We learned the hard way. May God save America. Take care.